Evolution. So to some people, I'm old. I am 54. I'm about to be 55. And in my lifetime, I have seen a lot of things change. So, for example, when I was in high school, there were no cell phones. I remember growing up and I was probably 8 or 9. And the first video game that I ever played was Pong. It was the little line that went up and down, only up and down. And you could hit a little ball across to the other line, so basically it was a ping pong game. And that was the first video game I ever played. Now, by the time I was probably 12, we were playing other things that were more advanced. And by the time I was a little older, you had Donkey Kong and Miss Pac-Man and, Galaga and Dig Dug and all this stuff. So anyone who's been alive for any length of time knows that we've seen so many things evolve. We've seen, 8 tracks go to CDs. We've seen cassette tapes go to CDs. We've seen videotapes go to streaming. We've seen all of these different things, right? Even the evolution of the cell phone, the evolution of cable. Some of us are old enough to know that there used to be a time when TV went off and there were no programs at night and you had just static on the screen and you had to turn the TV off because there was nothing to watch. I'm bringing this up because we all had to adapt to changing times. We had to adapt to things that were normalized, things that we were used to, becoming things that we could no longer even use or be able to access. We've seen laws change. When I was growing up, there were not child seats in cars. You rode around with a baby in your lap. You use the regular seat, the regular seat belt on a young child. So we've had seatbelt laws. We've had all of these things happen, right? For our protection, sometimes for our convenience, sometimes for our progress, sometimes. But the thing that's strange to me is even in this world where probably everybody over the age of 10 has gone through hundreds, if not thousands, of adaptations and has had to deal with all kinds of changing expectations and standards and, just changes to daily life. And we've seen that we can adapt. We've seen that what we thought was once normal, now there's a new normal. And a lot of times it's a better normal. It's a healthier, safer normal. I mean, I'm glad that there's not smoking everywhere. I think it's healthier for everybody, But again, there are people who may not be of my mindset. They may be angry about it, but they still have to adapt. Now, why is it that we don't apply that same mindset to romantic relationships, to marriage, to childcare, to home duties? Why is it that there's so much nostalgia for the days of yore, our grandmother's day, our grandfather's day? I saw this quote on TikTok and it said something like the disconnect between men and women is that men want the relationships that their grandfathers have and women want anything but that type of relationship, including singleness. And I think it's because some people, like myself, don't understand why people, especially men, can be open to change in every other area of life, whether it's technology, whether it's education, whether it's the way we interact socially. But when it comes to romantic relationships, there's the idea that there's no need for change, that everything was great just the way it was 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 100 years ago. Why is that? We can see that there's more convenience in many other things that have changed. There's more equity, there's more safety, there's more health benefits. We can see that when it comes to everything else. But somehow there's blinders on when it comes to men and women and how they interact. And to me, that leads me to think that the reason there's blinders on is because there's the idea that in this area, I don't have to change. If I dig my heels in, I can stop it. If I dig my heels in and complain and whine and argue and gaslight and shame and guilt trip, I won't have to change. I won't have to grow. I won't have to do any more than I'm used to doing, than I saw my parents do, my father, my grandfather. So why should I have to change? Why should I have to do more dishes or change more diapers or get up when the baby cries when my dad didn't do it, when my granddad didn't do it? Why should I have to, open a door for a woman or, take no for an answer when men in the past didn't do it? They found ways to bully this woman, either verbally, mentally, emotionally, whatever, into giving in, to coerce her into giving in. Why do I have to change? Seems to be the idea, seems to be the question, seems to be the entitlement. And I think that the people who have this attitude need to just realize that just like everything else around you, times they are changing. And you either get with the program or you get left behind. You either get with the program or you don't get to participate in dating and marriage and family and these other things that you may want. Because people, women, don't have to put up with the dinosaur mentality, the archaic mentality, the outdated mentality. They don't have to. Just like a person doesn't have to put up with the outdated technology that existed when I was a kid. They have other options, many other options. And I just think that we need to get to that point where men and women who keep harking on the days of yore realize that there were problems with those systems. They worked at the time because we didn't know any better. We didn't even realize the damage they were doing. We didn't realize that women on average died 8 years earlier, married women, than their single counterparts. We didn't realize the autoimmune diseases that happen when a person is stressed and overworked. We didn't realize the lack of fulfillment, the lack of happiness. We didn't realize anxiety and depression and all of these other things can happen when someone is overburdened. Mental health was not a big idea back 50, 60, 70 years ago. And now it's more of a front row idea where people are talking about it, people are thinking about it, people are acting on it. So just because something happened in the past doesn't mean it needs to happen now. Just because we put up with it in the past doesn't mean we need to put up with it now. We have hopefully learned, grown, and decided to do things better. And that should be the page that everybody's on. May you walk in Zenergy. Evolution. So to some people, I'm